Hey kids, howdy and welcome once again to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. We're here on July 22nd and Leo season starts today. And otherwise it's a pretty slim week. We got a few things to talk about, including Mercury changing signs. But first, as we always do, let's dive into a question. Hi, Dr. Lennox. I hope you are continuing to survive puppyhood. I am. It's overwhelming, but the most loving, overwhelming experience maybe I've ever had. I love the name you chose for her. It's my daughter's name as well. Yes, Penelope. I love that. Yay. Here's my question for you. I've been adding the layer of degrees into my astro knowledge, and I'm curious about that last degree in Pisces. As the anaretic degree of the last sign, does it have any special designation or meaning? And then she goes on to share why it's particularly important to her. There's a planet placement in her natal chart. So I love to talk about this because it speaks to something that is present in the zodiac that is about evolution, that there is a way that we start at the beginning with Aries and we evolve through each sign such that when we get to Pisces, we've completed the exploration of the human experience. And so it does mean that archetypally, as we move from one sign to the next, we're moving further into the territory of human consciousness and evolving. Now, one of the things I have to qualify with this is that I don't mean that Taurus is better than Aries and Gemini is better than Taurus and Cancer is better than that and Leo's, that's not what I mean, because that's personal. That's human beings in archetypal consciousness, and that's not what I'm talking about. We're not talking about the use of archetypal consciousness by human beings when we talk about the elegance of the fact that this particular 12-unit archetypal community is in an order for a reason. It's not random that one sign follows the other. Now, each sign is 30 degrees wide. So that means that any planet or luminary, the sun or the moon, moving through a sign has got to traverse 30 degrees to cross the entire mansion. So in the 1950s, when horoscopes were being invented, newspaper columnists invented this thing called cusp. There's no such thing as cusp in astrology. Your sun is either in this sign or it's in that sign. It's not a thing. It was invented to satisfy birth dates and little graphs in newspapers so that somebody could say, well, what date's my birthday? And is it like, oh, I'm on the cusp. I look at both signs. It's like, well, that's just fine for newspapers, but it ain't about astrology. And here's the description that I use in my sessions for any planet or point at the 30th degree, that last degree that is called the anaretic degree that implies mastery. And I use cusp to define it, meaning you think that cusp is when you get towards the end of a sign, that maybe the sun is in 26 or 27 or 28 or 29 degrees of the sign, that you're in the sign you're in, but looking towards where you're going to go. And that's the invention of the notion of cusp. Stop doing that, because that's not good astrology. And instead take this up. At the final degree of any sign, the body moving through that sign is going to stop. Remember, every sign's passage to the next sign has to be an evolution in consciousness. So that at the very final degree of a sign, the body in question isn't looking forward to where it's going. It's turning around and looking behind it. Have I covered everything? Did I learn everything? Have I mastered this mansion? And if I have now, I'm ready to move into the next mansion. So this idea says that any planet or point in a chart that's at the 30th degree of any sign, that means 29 degrees and any number of minutes, that planet's consciousness will reflect a masterful and whole and complete level of that archetype's consciousness. I'm a Leo sun, anaretic degree, final degree of Leo. So I know a lot about the mastery of Leo. I am all Leo, including all of the insufferable challenges of the Leo archetype in my sun. So I understand this idea of anaretic. So if each sign's anaretic mastery degree includes the wisdom of the 29 degrees that preceded it, and each of the 12 signs leads to the next in a kind of evolutionary addition to the human psyche, another layer of archetypal wisdom, when we complete the journey from Aries, that's the fired up I am, and here we go, and the last sign of Pisces, where I am connected to all that there is, and there's just pure potential, and we are behind form, that's the full journey. And then you can think of the journey as always existing and not being a one-time through. In other words, it's infinite. That we are always moving from the first sign to the final sign and then into the first sign again. So in the same way that the final degree of each sign contains the wisdom of all of the previous degrees, the final sign contains all the wisdom of the previous signs. That's why Pisces is able to represent the all that there is. Because in that deep, watery, oceanic, symbolic, archetypal consciousness of Pisces, those fish that swim below the ocean that don't even know there's a world up here, that vast unconscious space contains every nugget of wisdom of Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, and beyond, right? So the 30th degree of Pisces, it's like I can't get excited enough to convey how much consciousness is contained in the 30th degree of Pisces, because it's every ounce of it.
Yeah.
And then we split off from that unified consciousness of wholeness in Pisces, and we start up in the I am here with Aries in an infinite manner of moving through the zodiac past this 30th degree Pisces to 0 Aries, which we call the birth canal of the zodiac. Because every time we're in the vast internal spaces of potential in Pisces and split off into form with Aries, it's like being born.
Yeah.
And so, in fact, Natalie's question and the point in her chart that's represented by the 30th degree of Pisces really is deeply rich in that you have some aspect of your consciousness that contains this mastery of the all. Now, what you do with this information is sort of largely individual to you and your journey with astrology, as Natalie started out by telling us that she's using this idea to deepen her understanding of astrology by taking it to the next level and working with degrees, which is an advancement of her mastery. So have at it, and thanks for the question. It is Leo season, kids. It is official. In fact, I love this because I am, in fact, a Leo sun, anaretic, 30th degree. I also have Venus in Leo at 28 degrees of Leo. So Venus sun conjunct at the last bits of Leo. I am very Leonian. And this podcast comes out every Monday at midnight. And this Monday at midnight was the exact moment that the sun moved into Leo, like just right after midnight today. So we are in Leo season for the next 4 weeks. Leo is the archetype of the center, the part of us that's ready to shine brightly, ruled by the sun. Leo literally is the sun center of the zodiac. It's the fifth house in the natural wheel, and it's where we understand joy.
Hmm.
In fact, I sometimes teach this way. In fact, there's a masterclass, a free masterclass on my website about the archetypal community of signs, and I talk about this evolution that I kind of described a little bit in the question that we answered today, that here's why we can say Leo represents all things joyful. Because Aries starts it up by just getting here, right? We start in the void of Pisces and we have to get here. And Aries is the energy that says, I'll go. And he dives into the void and he pops up into form and he says, I'm here. Or he says, I am. Then, as soon as we are here, we've got to figure out where that is. And so Taurus is the next sign, grounded form. So Taurus invented the earth herself and says, okay, if we're here, we're someplace beautiful. It's loving and it's sensual and it's yummy.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as we've established where we are, we cannot navigate this territory unless we can communicate.
Okay.
So Gemini comes along and invents words and ideas so that there's the possibility of expansion through ideas. Cancer has to come next because if we don't contain this in a nurturing capacity, we can't foster it, right? Life is fragile. So Cancer says, here's how we care for this incredible experience that we're moving through. So once we're here, we've established form, we can connect and we can protect ourselves. Now we get to play. And that's Leo. So sun-centered, creative expression, organic leadership, a kind of entrepreneurial sensibility. Leo is where we are extroverted, living out loud, ready to take on what it is to stand front and center and receive the attention for the things you are offering the world. This means that when we move through the new moon in Leo, we're going to set intentions that align us with our creative desires, our ability to comfortably and confidently share our gifts with the world, because Leo invented that we each have gifts to share. Then in the full moon in Aquarius, it's when we are dropping the insufferable elements of Leo that are too self-focused and don't understand that your gifts and talents are all that and a bag of chips. But if you're not sharing them with the community, then you're not doing the right thing by us. And that's the Leo sensibility when we move through the Aquarius full moon. So look to the house in your chart ruled by Leo, if you know it. Understand that the thrust of energy for the next 4 weeks is in the direction of knowing your creative gifts and sharing them more confidently with the world. And the backdrop energy for 4 weeks will be fixed fire. So fire means movement, combustion, the capacity to stir things up and get things going. It's an incredibly creative element. But it's fixed. It's a fixed fire, which means we'll all be a little bit more attached to our way, not the, our way or the highway kind of Leonian self-focused consciousness. So watch out for that a little bit. But it's a great time to focus on both your personal, creative, inspirational ideas and where in your life you want to stand up into powerful, centered leadership. Now that the sun has moved into Leo, the first thing it's doing is opposing Saturn. So that's happening today. As you're listening to this podcast, if you download it or listen to it when it first comes out, we are in an awareness of power struggle transit, sun conscious awareness in an opposition, meaning undeniable setup with Pluto, power and authority issues, shadow work. And so what's interesting about that isn't just that today's an intense day, yesterday, today, and tomorrow might find us all in some measure of power struggles. I'm more pointing out this opposition with Pluto because last year and this year, because Pluto is hanging out at the 0 degree of Aquarius, and later in the year will backtrack by retrograde motion to the 30th degree of Capricorn, that means that every time the planet or the moon changes signs all year long, it's interacting with Pluto.
Ah.
So an ingress is a sensitive experience as it is. When the sun changes signs, we feel it. When the moon changes signs, that's a ding. When any planet changes signs, that's big enough for us to talk about it astrologically. And so during the year of 2024, every time a planet or the sun or the moon changes signs for the next couple of months at 0 degrees of the new sign, it's interacting with the Lord of the Underworld. Deep change and transformation are going to happen this year as a result. And then even when he backtracks into Capricorn, like later in the year, like September through late November of this year, Pluto's back in Capricorn at the 30th degree. He's just at that 29 degrees in a handful of minutes. So it's the same thing, only on the front end of the change of signs by the sun or the moon or a planet. It just means that all year long, every time a planet changes signs, they have to go through the Pluto toll booth, where they might be asked to kill themselves and then be resurrected and reborn in a new way. So that might be part of what we can understand this summer as we move into Leo season and we get lit up by the desire to be more front and center creative and extroverted. We're also going to bump straight into change and transformation demands that our conscious awareness is moving through by bumping into this opposition with Pluto. And just as someone who's trying to learn more about astrology, and I assume if you're listening to this podcast, you are, know that every time you see the planet changing signs this year or the sun or the moon, know that we're all going through some kind of Plutonian transformation. The only other thing of note that's happening this week is the movement of Mercury into Virgo. That happens on Thursday. So Mercury's in his retrograde cycle. He's not moving backwards yet. That's actually going to happen on August 5th. So he's still in what we call the retrograde shadow. He's going to go retrograde over these degree points, and that started back on July 17th and will go through August 5th. So that whole sort of 2.5 weeks of mid-July through early August is the kind of, I like to joke, it's the brochure of the retrograde portion. That'll be bumpy as fuck, and now we're getting all of the data we need to effectively move through the backward journey of Mercury more efficiently, effectively, and get something out of it. And how we do that is we pay attention to all of the communication challenges that come up during the shadow because they are likely to return when Mercury goes backwards. The fact that Mercury is changing signs in the middle of this shadow period means he'll also retrograde back from Virgo into Leo and then finish up in Virgo again. So whenever a Mercury retrograde crosses over in between two mansions like this, I like to interpret that as having a kind of sensibility that the retrograde itself, the whole cycle, is somehow designed for us to combine the power of both Leo in our voice, but also Virgo in our voice. And I like to use the order as a kind of storytelling technique. Meaning, we start out with Mercury in Leo, so we entered territory a few weeks ago where we have the sort of boldest, most outgoing, confident, leadership-oriented voice that each of us is capable of having, Mercury in Leo. So if Mercury then moves into Virgo, which is healing and integrative and where we sort of put all our ducks in a row and figure out what needs to be adjusted or healed, What happens in this retrograde is Mercury's like, okay, wait a minute. We're healing and we're putting all the little details into place, but I kind of feel like we need more roar. Let's go back into the Leo mansion and find some more confidence, some more a willingness to speak up. So, in the aggregate, all of us are having this experience of putting together these two mansions, and just sort of put that into your perception as you're thinking, about how this retrograde is going to play out. And just know that as of this Thursday, communication and the style of it is going to get into a much more detailed, precise territory where we're interested in all of the precision. Mercury and Leo, not interested in precision, mostly just interested in bluster and expression. Once we get into Virgo starting Thursday, it's all about the details. And so you want to pay particular attention to Mercury gaffes that show up between now and August 5th, because Mercury will be starting on Thursday in his ruling sign. So just understand that as of Thursday, the communication challenges might be a little bit more bumpy and challenging. I sometimes think that when Mercury's retrograde in Gemini or Virgo, they're a little more difficult because they're his ruling signs. So as of Thursday and Thursday through August 5th, when Mercury turns around, the communication challenges that I hope you're paying attention to and have been since July 17th might get a little bumpier. Keep paying attention to anything that's problematic or that starts up a kind of ongoing negotiation sensibility, because once we get to the first week in August, we're going to be revisiting everything that's coming up in July as August unfolds. Ultimately, this is a profound healing Mercury retrograde cycle because he's in Virgo, co-ruled by Chiron, and there's a triple transit in this retrograde cycle that's very healing. Mercury's going to be trining Chiron 3 times. That's interesting to me because he trines Chiron from Leo and then moves into Virgo. Here's where we get to tell the archetypal story. Mercury in Leo, bold and expressive. Trines Chiron, gets in touch with what are the wounds connected with the big, loud, expressive voice. And then Mercury moves into Virgo, Chiron's ruling sign, and it becomes a healing process. Just to move through July and August alone and pay attention to your communication challenges and the resolves that show up in August, and then when we get there to the wrap-up from late August to early September, this is going to be a powerfully healing Mercury retrograde cycle, even if it's a little bumpy. Pay attention to what's coming up so you can do a better job of moving through when planet goes direct on August 5th, and have at it.
Did you know that Michael has a daily astro alert? If you enjoy hearing the weekly astrology, you might like knowing more about each day. When you subscribe for the daily astro alerts, you'll get an in-depth explanation of the day's astrology sent right to your email. Subscriptions are only $10 a month, or you can purchase the yearly subscription at the reduced price of $100. To subscribe, head over to michaellennox.com. All right, it's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully your dream will make it onto the show. So this week we have an email and dream, and I don't know if we've done this animal, which is a turtle. So I'm
Ooh,
excited to hear what turtle medicine means.
me
Okay.
too.
Yeah. Tasmin writes in, Hi, Dream Team. So I had a dream last night about a turtle. I was walking on a beach. The sand was soft, almost quicksand like. It was
Oh,
wet and soft, and you'd sink down a little bit into it. There was a slight breeze, and I was holding a turtle between my hands outstretched. He wasn't a sea turtle, but like the kind you'd get from the pet store, about 12 inches long. Then he got away from me. Once he was on the wet sand, he dug himself down. I was freaking out because someone, in quotes, was going to be mad at me that I lost their turtle. I quickly dropped down and started digging, looking for him. I was also concerned that another dangerous turtle was going to run into him under the sand and hurt/attack him. I found him and pulled him out unwillingly. Then the dream changed. It was quick but interesting. Thanks so much.
oh wow. Oh, so that's okay. Got
So
it. So
that was
just
it?
this
Yeah.
chapter. Oh
Mm-hmm.
wow. I love the beach and the sand and the quicksand image. I'm just going to zip around the images that are
Sure.
grabbing me, and then we'll see. We'll go back to the beginning and make some sense of it. So I was very drawn by the idea of quicksand, right? So if we're at the beach, we're in that juicy place that is halfway between conscious awareness and the unconscious mind. Land is consciousness, the sea is the unconscious, and so that interaction where the waters of the unconscious are grabbing old land and pulling it under, and new land is being spat out, right? So that idea says that when we dance between the unconscious and the conscious awareness in that juicy place where they directly interact, we are at our richest ability to sort of dwell in both realms and the dynamic way that each realm changes the other in the way that the ocean makes the beach different, right? So there's something interesting about the wetness and the softness that reminds me of the complex way our feeling nature sometimes overwhelms us,
Hmm.
right? That if land is consciousness and water is the emotional content of being human, this wet, soft quicksand is like land, ideas, thoughts, things we can sort of air quotes stand on, but that are so filled with emotion that we sink. I'm also struck by the pet store association. I don't know if you had this experience, but when I was a kid, turtles were a very common pet for a child.
Mm-hmm. I had turtles in middle school.
So right there, like there's a fairly prescient association with turtles and a child's pet. That makes me want to say, hey, Tasmin, we might be in some consideration of emotional stuff that come from, the childhood consciousness. I'm actually going to look turtle medicine up while we're sitting here, just because I understand a little bit about turtles intuitively. I'm sure I wrote about it in my book, but let's see what the interwebs have to say.
Well, I'm guessing wise or something like that, since turtles are slow and old and
Well, you're actually, that's fascinating. One
whatnot.
of the first things I see, generally speaking, the turtle spiritual totem suggests that we slow down and check that where we are supposed to be to savor the benefits of each moment. So yes, I think but actually, I just want to point something out, Zoe. Like
Mhm.
you just made a kind of assumption based on your perception of turtle,
Got
and
it.
that's how it works.
Yeah.
Right? It's like the qualities of the animal describe the medicine. So, yes, the slowness suggests we can move a little more mindfully and carefully without missing a detail.
Mhm.
The fact that they are turtles amphibians? Oh my God. Now I sound like a fucking person who doesn't know things. Are turtles
Yes.
amphibians?
Yeah.
Ugh! They dwell in the water. So I was going to look up if they're actually amphibians or not. I cannot believe that I don't know these things. I'm a 60-year-old well-educated man.
They are reptiles.
They are reptiles. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, even more then. Let's use that. So we added another distinction. Rather than being amphibian, which then I would interpret as having something to do with comfort and emotionality, that ain't accurate, so we can't add that to the interpretation. But that they are reptiles suggests a kind of primitive brain consciousness. The reptilian brain is an association we all make about our humanity when it comes to the basic functioning of existing in life in a body where we breathe and we are carried through life at a very fundamental level. And so I do think that this dream is ultimately about something on that journey. So Tasmin starts on the beach. So we're in Tasmin's unconscious, conscious, rich place where things are going to emerge. She's at risk of sinking in, right? That's the implication. I might drown in my emotional overwhelm as the consciousness of land gets too wet to support me. The turtle being held outstretched, I can't help but see that as an almost devotional gesture. Like it to me, it's like I'm thinking like, the Lion King lifting up, the lion cub, like the holding it outstretched. Again, Tasmin's not here to tell us her association, so I'm just getting that from the lines that she used in the email. But right there, then, let's just pretend that I'm sort of accurate with that there is a gesture here that Tasmin is saying, there's a part of me, turtle medicine, that I'm calling in now. I'm lifting up my arms. I'm calling in this medicine. And this is the part of me, Tasmin, that can slowly, mindfully, and comfortably go into territory that's just below the surface of consciousness where our emotional material is sort of emanating from. So that this turtle gets away and on the wet sand digs himself down, then that's the medicine's message, because that's what the medicine character does. That behavior says, okay, this medicine says I can dig below the surface a little bit and learn something. And then the added piece of like, is this dangerous? Might another turtle attack? It's like, that to me sounds like the added extra fear that doesn't trust the idea that sometimes we have to move very slowly through emotionally treacherous territory that we might sink into and get overwhelmed, but we in fact have medicine that's comfortable in those below the surface spaces that are juicy and dicey that we must get comfortable with. And this is Tasmin's dream version of connecting to the medicine that's going to help her navigate deeply emotional territory that might otherwise be a little overwhelming.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.